Everyone keeps saying XRP is the chosen one, and I don't take things at surface level. Not anymore. I want to dive in deeper. Why? Why is it the chosen one? In the last video, we discovered that in AMM-based payment systems, which we are going towards, by the way, the BIS and the IMF all say we're doing that. They've done the tests. We're moving out of the testing phase into deployment. We know it's happening, but we also know we're at a fork in the road. If the BIS go one way and inform all of the central banks to do one thing, XRP is essentially removed from the equation. If it goes another way, which is what this video is all about, this creates a role and a function in the system for XRP that is undeniable. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact process and the exact outcome that we're looking for from the BIS and the IMF that would essentially choose XRP. Now, I think the big misconceptions here are that people believe that XRP is chosen by the IMF in a secret boardroom and they say, yes, we're going to choose IMF. And look, I will reserve a tiny percentage of possibility in my mind for that being the case. We have people talking about, set price theory and all that kind of stuff. And you can give a big shout out to Versan Al-Jarrah, who on my podcast in Houston disclosed some really interesting information about a set price for XRP that was decided by the IMF, and you can roll the clip.
Confirmed this, that the International Monetary Fund has already agreed on a price before all this integration started to happen. So this was a few years ago. They agreed upon a price, and I got a lot of information from Linda P. Jones has a friend who worked at the Central Bank of Australia, and she said that they agreed upon a price, and it's in the thousands.
And I will reserve that it is entirely a possibility that that's the case. But if it's not the case, how is XRP actually decided upon if we just look at banking documentation and the rules that they have for us? And it creates a very different picture. Because if you look at it through that lens, XRP isn't actually chosen by a boardroom. It's not chosen by any individuals. It's chosen in a different way. And it's in a way that you probably haven't considered. And it's underpinned by this one kind of understanding in the financial market. And it is that it's much the same as like a river, for example. The water will flow in an area that is the least restrictive, right? It's the easiest path. And so if you've ever seen that clip of some guys digging the sand out on a beach, trying to connect the river to the water and the ocean, and it creates this massive wave, essentially, it's because they found a path of least resistance for the water, and the water just chose that path. Financial markets are the same. It's not like they're necessarily choosing the optimal way to do things, the best technology necessarily. They're choosing the one that has the least friction. Speed, we know that the current financial system has a delay in time. If I want to send a payment from bank A to bank B, there's a delay in time so that we, at the end of the day, as banks, can figure out where to find the money. And then we do a process called netting. That is where if I need to send $10 million to a bank and that bank owes us $9 million, then we'll just send them $1 million and then it cancels it out. It requires far less liquidity to do that, and it's really efficient. But that's why we have the time delay in payments. Now we're moving towards an instant settlement payment system. We're removing that time, meaning the banks won't have time to find the money. So what does that mean? Well, it means the liquidity, the money needs to be in place already, pre-funded before these transactions take place. And I'm not making that up. That's actually in the IMF documentation. They released a document for the G20 countries, and it suggests exactly that you need to pre-fund these accounts with liquidity. And this is where we need to bring up something that I think we come across all the time. And I get this in the comments as well. How can we be talking about pre-funding? Didn't XRP solve pre-funding? Didn't on-demand liquidity by XRP solve this whole issue? Why are we talking about it like it's going to continue? The short answer is no. The way on-demand liquidity worked, the way Ripple built it, is that it sources liquidity from market makers and exchanges the very moment that the transaction needs to take place. And that means you won't need to pre-fund these correspondent accounts to provide the liquidity. But in reality, there is somebody pre-funding, right? The exchange accounts are pre-funding that liquidity. The liquidity providers in those order books are pre-funding the liquidity. And so this pre-funding requirement didn't disappear, it just moved into a different place. More importantly, on-demand liquidity works really well in the current scale. But when you're talking about an insane amount of transactions, potentially being facilitated by XRP on a global scale. Like imagine the world's transactions moving through XRP. You cannot rely on the spot market for liquidity. The slippage on that would be absolutely catastrophic. We truly explain what slippage is if you don't know already in the power law video. Again, you must go and watch that. So you actually need liquidity that's locked up, not used for any other situation. And that is, again, decided in the BIS and IMF documentation that suggests that this liquidity needs to be frozen in place and not used for any other reason. And because of that, yes, we're still doing pre-funding and we haven't erased pre-funding. Again, what we're doing is moving the responsibility of pre-funding away from market makers like exchanges and the spot market and moving them into a more controlled environment. So then the question changes from, did on-demand liquidity solve pre-funding, and actually moves to, okay, so where does that pre-funding go? Where do we put the money? Where do we put the XRP?